Maya looked like any normal 14-year-old girl on the plane. But hidden under her sweatshirt was her father's military dog tag. Colonel James Falcon Reynolds had been one of America's greatest fighter pilots. When the military escort discovered who she was, everything changed at 35,000 feet. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Maya Reynolds sat in seat 17A, looking like any other 14-year-old girl on a plane. She wore faded blue jeans and an old navy sweatshirt that was too big for her small frame. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she had a book about famous pilots open on her lap. White earbuds connected to her phone played soft music as she tried to distract herself from the reason for this trip. The flight attendants smiled at her warmly and offered extra snacks and juice, treating her like any kid who needed looking after. Other passengers barely noticed her, just another teenager traveling alone, probably visiting family for the summer or going to camp. A businessman in the seat across from her was busy typing on his laptop. An elderly woman behind her was knitting quietly. Everything seemed normal and peaceful. But Maya carried a secret that no one on the plane knew about. Hidden under her loose sweatshirt was a small military dog tag on a thin silver chain around her neck. The metal was worn smooth from years of handling, and the letters were slightly faded but still readable. It didn't belong to her, it had belonged to her father, Colonel James Falcon Reynolds, one of the most respected and famous fighter pilots in Air Force history. Colonel Reynolds had earned his call sign Falcon during his first combat tour when he was just 26 years old. The name came from his incredible eyesight and his ability to spot enemy aircraft from impossible distances, swooping down on targets with the speed and precision of a hunting bird. Over 3 tours in different combat zones, he had shot down 12 enemy aircraft, saved countless American lives, and led dangerous rescue missions that other pilots still talked about with deep respect and amazement. His name was legendary among fighter pilots everywhere, spoken with the kind of reverence usually reserved for war heroes from history books. But Maya's father had died in a training accident 2 years ago during what should have been a routine practice flight. The loss had shattered their small family. Now Maya was flying alone to Norfolk, Virginia, to visit her paternal grandmother and attend a special memorial service at the naval base where her father had been stationed early in his career. Maya's mother, Sarah, had wanted to come on this trip, but she was still struggling with her grief and couldn't handle being around her late husband's military friends. So Maya had volunteered to go alone, even though she was nervous about flying by herself. She wanted to represent her father at the ceremony and hear the stories that his old squadron mates would tell. The flight had been quiet and uneventful for the first 2 hours. Maya had tried to read her book, but her mind kept wandering to memories of her father. She remembered how he would take her to air shows on weekends, explaining the different types of aircraft and telling her stories about his flying adventures. He had always made flying sound like the most magical thing in the world. Then the captain's calm voice came over the intercom, breaking through her thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unusual air traffic in our area today. Military aircraft will be escorting our flight for the remainder of our journey. This is just a standard precaution, and there's absolutely no cause for alarm. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Maya looked out her small window and gasped. 2 sleek F-22 Raptor fighter jets were flying alongside the commercial plane, their gray metal surfaces gleaming like silver in the bright afternoon sunlight. They maintained perfect formation, moving with the kind of precision that only came from years of training. She had seen F-22s before at air shows with her father, but never this close during a regular passenger flight. The sight made her heart race with excitement and a touch of sadness. In the cockpit of the lead F-22, Major Rick Viper Chin adjusted his helmet and spoke into his radio with the crisp professionalism of an experienced pilot. Control, this is Viper 1. We have visual contact on United Flight 447. Aircraft is maintaining proper altitude and course. Requesting passenger manifest for routine security screening. The air traffic controller's voice crackled back through the radio static. Viper 1 sending manifest now. We're conducting standard checks for anyone with military connections or security clearances. Should be routine. Major Chen's wingman, Captain Lisa Storm Martinez, flew in tight formation beside him in the second F-22. She was one of only a few female F-22 pilots in the Air Force and had earned her call sign during a particularly difficult mission in bad weather. Control, this is Storm 2. I'm reviewing the passenger list on my screen, and I'm seeing a name here that can't possibly be right. It shows a passenger listed as M. Falcon Reynolds in seat 17A. There was a long, surprised pause on the radio frequency. Then Major Chen's voice came back, filled with disbelief and confusion. Storm, did you just say Falcon? As in Colonel James Falcon Reynolds? That's exactly what it says here on my screen, Viper. But that doesn't make any sense at all. Falcon went down 2 years ago in that training accident over Nevada. The whole Air Force mourned that loss. Major Chen felt his heart skip a beat and his hands tighten on the controls. Every fighter pilot in the United States Air Force knew about Falcon Reynolds. The man had been a living legend long before his tragic death, holder of 3 distinguished flying crosses, 2 silver stars, a bronze star, and more successful combat missions than most pilots accumulated in their entire careers. Chen had actually had the honor of flying with Falcon during a joint training exercise 5 years earlier, and the experience had made him a better pilot. Storm, that has to be family. Maybe his wife or his daughter, Chen said into his radio, his voice showing both curiosity and respect. Control, we need to verify the identity of passenger Reynolds in seat 17A. This could be important. Back on the commercial flight, Maya began to notice increased activity from the flight crew. The captain had been talking quietly into his headset for several minutes, and flight attendants were checking passenger lists more carefully than usual. She didn't think much of it at first, assuming it was just part of the military escort procedure, until Jessica, the friendly flight attendant who had been taking care of her, approached her seat with a slightly nervous expression. "Excuse me, sweetie," Jessica said gently, crouching down to Maya's eye level. "The captain needs to verify some passenger information for the military escort. It's just routine, but can you tell me your full name including any middle names?" Maya looked up from her book with innocent brown eyes that reminded Jessica of her own daughter. "Maya Falcon Reynolds," she answered in a clear, simple voice. Jessica's eyes widened with surprise and recognition. She had heard the name Falcon mentioned several times in the hushed radio conversations between the cockpit and ground control. As a former Air Force Reserve member herself, she knew that military call signs weren't just nicknames that pilots chose for fun, they were earned through exceptional skill, courage, and the respect of fellow aviators. "And, honey, is Falcon your middle name or does it mean something special?" Jessica asked carefully. Maya touched the dog tag under her sweatshirt unconsciously. "It was my father's call sign when he was a fighter pilot," she said quietly, her voice carrying a mixture of pride and sadness. "He was Colonel James Reynolds, but everyone in the Air Force called him Falcon." Jessica felt a chill run down her spine and goosebumps appear on her arms. She excused herself politely and immediately walked quickly to the front of the plane, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just learned. In the cockpit, Captain Robert Hayes listened carefully as Jessica explained what Maya had told her. His co-pilot, First Officer Jennifer Park, stopped what she was doing to listen as well. Both pilots understood the significance of military call signs and the respect they commanded. "Control, this is United 447, Captain Hayes spoke into his radio with newfound solemnity. "We can confirm that passenger M. Reynolds in seat 17A is Maya Reynolds, daughter of the late Colonel James Falcon Reynolds, United States Air Force." The radio frequency fell silent for several seconds. Then Major Chen's voice came back, filled with emotion and respect. "United 447, please stand by while we verify this information and coordinate with Air Force Command." Minutes later, the captain's voice came over the intercom again, but this time it carried a completely different tone, more formal, respectful, and reverent. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have been informed by our military escort that we are deeply honored to have a very special passenger aboard our flight today. Miss Maya Reynolds, seated in 17A, is the daughter of the late Colonel James Falcon Reynolds, one of the most decorated and respected fighter pilots in United States Air Force history." The entire cabin fell completely silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Laptops closed. Books were set aside. Every passenger turned to look toward the quiet girl in seat 17A, suddenly realizing that the ordinary-looking teenager they had barely noticed was carrying the legacy of a genuine American war hero. Maya felt her cheeks turn red with embarrassment as dozens of eyes focused on her. She had never liked being the center of attention, and she certainly hadn't expected anything like this to happen during her flight. Outside the plane, Major Chen's voice came over the secure military radio frequency with formal precision. "Air Force Control, this is Viper 1. Requesting immediate permission to render full aerial honors for the family of Colonel James Falcon Reynolds. We have his daughter aboard the civilian aircraft we are escorting." "Viper 1, permission absolutely granted," came the immediate response from command. "All military aircraft in the area are cleared for ceremonial formation flying. Show that young lady the respect her father earned and deserved." What happened next brought tears to Maya's eyes and would stay with her for the rest of her life. The two F-22 Raptors moved into a special formation that Maya recognized from air shows. It was called the Missing Man Formation. The three aircraft, including the commercial plane, flew in perfect alignment. Then one of the fighters pulled up sharply in a steep climb toward the clouds, leaving an empty space in the formation. This maneuver was a solemn military tradition used to honor fallen pilots, symbolizing the empty space left behind by those who had made the ultimate sacrifice. But the tribute was far from over. As Maya watched through her small window with wonder and growing emotion, two more F-22 Raptors appeared from a different direction, their engines creating thin contrails against the blue sky. Then two more fighters joined them. Within 10 minutes, 6 of America's most advanced and expensive fighter jets were flying in perfect ceremonial formation around the commercial airliner, all to honor the memory of her father. The other passengers pressed against their windows in amazement. Many had never seen military aircraft up close, and the sight of 6 F-22s in formation was both breathtaking and deeply moving. Flight attendants stood in the aisles, some wiping tears from their eyes as they understood the significance of what they were witnessing. Major Chen's voice came over the radio one more time, but this time it was broadcast directly to the entire commercial flight through the plane's intercom system, so every passenger could hear his words. "Miss Reynolds," his voice was clear and strong, filled with emotion and respect. "This is Major Rick Chen, United States Air Force, flying Viper 1. I had the great honor of flying combat missions with your father during Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Colonel Falcon Reynolds saved my life and the lives of my entire squadron on more than one occasion. His courage, skill, and leadership were legendary among everyone who knew him." Captain Martinez's voice joined in over the radio. "Miss Reynolds, this is Captain Lisa Martinez in Storm 2. I never had the privilege of flying with your father personally, but his reputation and his training methods influenced every female pilot in the Air Force, including me. He believed that the sky belonged to anyone brave enough and skilled enough to claim it, regardless of gender or background. Your father's legacy lives on in every mission we fly, every pilot we train, and every life we protect." Maya pressed her small hand against the cool window as tears rolled down her cheeks. The powerful fighter jets maintained their respectful formation with military precision, their presence transforming what had been an ordinary commercial flight into something extraordinary and sacred. A third voice joined the radio conversation, this one from Major David "Hawk" Johnson, flying one of the additional F-22s that had joined the formation. "Miss Reynolds, your father taught me during flight school that being a fighter pilot meant more than just flying fast jets. He said we were guardians of freedom, protectors of the innocent, and keepers of the peace. Every time I climb into my cockpit, I remember his words and try to live up to the standard he set." An elderly man in seat 12C, wearing a faded military cap that identified him as a Vietnam veteran, stood up slowly with the help of his cane and began clapping with weathered hands. He had tears in his eyes as he looked toward Maya with deep respect and understanding. Soon the entire plane erupted in sustained applause, not just for the incredible aerial display outside their windows, but for Maya and the sacrifice her family had made for their country. The applause continued for several minutes, accompanied by nods of respect and words of gratitude from passengers who wanted Maya to know how much her father's service meant to them. A young mother with 2 small children leaned over from across the aisle. "Thank you," she said simply to Maya. "Thank you and your family for keeping us safe." The flight attendant Jessica returned to Maya's seat, but this time her approach was completely different. She no longer spoke to her like a child who needed protection and supervision. Instead, she spoke to her with the deep respect deserved by the daughter of a genuine American hero. "Your father must have been an incredible man," Jessica said softly, kneeling beside Maya's seat. "I served in the Air Force Reserves for 8 years and even there we all knew about Colonel Falcon Reynolds. His name was spoken with the kind of respect reserved for the very best among us." Maya nodded, touching the worn dog tag under her sweatshirt with fingers that trembled slightly. "He always told me that flying wasn't just about being up in the sky or going fast. He said it was about the people you protect on the ground and the wingmen you promise to bring home safely. He said a pilot's real job was to make sure that families could sleep peacefully at night." As the formation of F-22s continued their escort, Maya allowed her mind to drift back to countless memories of her father. She remembered Saturday mornings when he would take her to the base to watch training flights. She could still hear his patient voice explaining how different aircraft worked, why pilots needed so much training, and what it felt like to break the sound barrier. "The most important thing about being a pilot," he had told her once while they watched F-16s practice takeoffs, "is remembering that you're part of something much bigger than yourself. You're part of a brotherhood that extends beyond individual squadrons, beyond individual bases, and even beyond individual wars. When you wear those wings, you carry the responsibility for everyone who came before you and everyone who will come after you. Maya had always been proud of her father, but she was beginning to understand for the first time just how much his service had meant to the broader military community. The respect being shown by these pilots wasn't just politeness or sympathy, it was genuine reverence for a man who had embodied the very best traditions of military aviation. The formation flight continued for another 45 minutes as the commercial plane approached the Norfolk area. The F-22 pilots maintained perfect position despite the fuel cost and the complexity of flying in formation with a much slower civilian aircraft. This was clearly more than just a routine escort, it was a heartfelt tribute from the entire fighter pilot community. Before the F-22s had to return to their various bases for refueling, they performed one final, breathtaking maneuver. The 6 fighters climbed steeply into the clear afternoon sky, their engines leaving thick white contrails against the deep blue background. As Maya and the other passengers watched in amazement, the contrails formed letters in the sky, spelled out in massive script that could be seen for miles. The aerial calligraphy hung in the sky for several minutes before the wind began to disperse it, but the image was burned into Maya's memory forever. She took several photos with her phone, knowing that she would want to show them to her mother and grandmother. When United Flight 447 finally touched down at Norfolk International Airport, Maya was surprised and overwhelmed to find a small but distinguished group of Air Force officers waiting at the gate. They weren't there on any kind of official business. They were there because word had spread quickly through the close-knit military aviation community that Falcon Reynolds' daughter was coming to Norfolk. Colonel Sarah Mitchell, the current base commander at Naval Air Station Oceana, approached Maya with a crisp military salute as she walked up the jetway. Colonel Mitchell was an impressive figure, tall, confident, and wearing a uniform decorated with numerous ribbons and badges that told the story of a distinguished career. "Miss Reynolds," Colonel Mitchell said with formal respect, "on behalf of the United States Air Force, the United States Navy, and every pilot who serves in defense of our nation today, we want you to know that your father's legacy continues to inspire and guide us every single day we take to the skies. He was quite simply one of the finest aviators and officers this country has ever produced." Maya felt overwhelmed by the formal attention but managed to respond politely. "Thank you, ma'am. My father always said that he was proud to serve with people like you." As Maya walked through the airport terminal, accompanied by her new military escorts, she realized that being in seat 17A that day had fundamentally changed something important about her life. She wasn't just a teenager traveling alone anymore, trying to cope with the loss of her father. She was now fully aware that she was the keeper of Colonel James Falcon Reynolds' legacy, and that the entire military aviation community, thousands of pilots, crew members, and support personnel, stood ready to honor that legacy whenever she needed them. The quiet girl who had seemed so ordinary and unremarkable to her fellow passengers at the beginning of the flight carried within her the living spirit of one of America's greatest fighter pilots. And now, thanks to the extraordinary respect and honor shown by Major Chin, Captain Martinez, and their fellow aviators, everyone knew that heroes' legacies live on through the families they leave behind. Maya smiled through her tears as she remembered her father's favorite saying, "A true pilot never flies alone. They carry the hopes, dreams, and protection of everyone who depends on them, and they're always supported by the wings of everyone who flies beside them." Today she had learned an important lesson that would stay with her forever. Even though her beloved father was gone, she would never truly be alone. The entire brotherhood and sisterhood of military aviation would always be her wingmen, ready to support her and honor her father's memory. The story of Maya Reynolds, the remarkable girl in seat 17A, spread throughout the Air Force community within days, shared in squadron-ready rooms, officer clubs, and flight training schools across the country. It became a reminder that heroism isn't just about individual achievement or personal glory, it's about the lasting impact that one dedicated person can have on everyone who follows in their contrails. And sometimes, that profound impact shows up in the most unexpected places, even 35,000 feet above the ground during what starts as a routine commercial flight. Years later, Maya would indeed become a pilot herself, inspired by that unforgettable day when the sky filled with America's finest fighters, all flying in formation to honor her father's memory. But she would never forget the moment when she truly understood what it meant to carry the name Falcon. It meant carrying the respect, admiration, and eternal brotherhood of every military aviator who understood the true meaning of service, sacrifice, and honor. The legacy of Colonel James Falcon Reynolds lived on, not just in military records or medal citations, But in the heart of a young girl who learned that day that heroes never truly die, they just fly on ahead, waiting for the rest of us to catch up.